An array is simply a data structure that consists of 0 or more elements. These elements are accessible through indices and can be any of the primitive data types or objects, but the elements must remain the same. Arrays contain the same type and are represented as contiguous blocks of memory. They have a size that is represented by a special member variable of the array entitled length. When you access the elements in the array, all elements start at index 0 up to array.length minus 1. If you should access array.length or greater, an array index out of bounds exception will be raised. To better illustrate, consider a train. The boxcars on a train represent the elements on an array. Each boxcar may contain one type of thing. The important thing to note is, it is a homogeneous collection. You can also go a step further and use multidimensional arrays that have the same restrictions as the aforementioned single-dimensional array. A good two-dimensional analogy is an ice cube tray. So now that you understand the basics of arrays, I am now going to show you an example of a one-dimensional array. I already have my backbone here in BlueJ, and these are going to be very simple examples, and we're going to make an array with 10 items in it, 10 integers, and we're just going to print out those integers. So we're going to start by making our array. I like to declare mine final. And this is how you make your array. This is just saying I have this variable that is an array, and it's an integer, it's holding integers, and it's holding 10 of them. And to actually put integers in this array, I'll have to loop through, and I will loop through I like to do array.length. It's just a good habit. I like to keep for more complex programs when you are doing multiple methods. It's easier than having to go back and look for the length and keep up with the length. If you hand the length into the method, then you can just say array.length. And this is saying in this array, at this position, make it equal the loop. So at array sub 0, for example, that position will be 0. Array sub 1, that position will be 1. And now we have to go through and print out our integers that we have, and I'm just going to reuse loop, that is legal. System.out print. We cannot do a print line in this specific case because that would give us an integer a line, and I am wanting to do all integers in one line. And we're going to see if that compiles. It does compile. And as you can see, it does work. When I initially wrote this little program, I got confused. I expected it to be 1, 2, 3 instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, and I'll explain that now for any of you who might be confused. The reason it starts at 0 and not 1 is because our loop starts at 0 and not 1. We'll now move on to two-dimensional arrays. This one will be a little more complex and a little more interesting. I thought it would be cute to have the program play tic-tac-toe with itself on an array with 3 rows or 3 columns, randomly generating a 0 or a 1 that will determine if it is an X or an O. So I have already imported java.io and java.util. Make sure you import that so the randoms will work. So first I'll make my random. And then I will make my array. And the reason I am making this a string array is because it will be holding an X or an O, not an integer. And it will have two sets of brackets because it is a two-dimensional array. And this tells me how many rows and how many columns this array has. Declare this final as well. And now I have to loop through the rows and the columns. And with this, I initially was confused as to how the program knows where it is in the array. And basically what I like to think of is the outer loop doing like a one-dimensional array would, going across the rows, and the inner loop doing the actual two-dimensional part going down the columns. And again with array.length. And that's my outer loop going across the rows. And now I have to go across the columns. In this inner loop, I have to do an if check for my random number. In here, I want to check and see if the random number generated is a 0 or a 1. If it is a 0, it will be an X, else it will be a O. And I just generate my next integer within this if. The reason this is 2 and not 1 is because random.nextInt is non-inclusive. All this is saying is, I forgot my bracket. This is saying that in this array, at position, for example, row 1, column 1, which would be the first, it would be an X. Else, if it's 0 up here, else it'll be an O. And now I have to actually step through and print those values. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it down here because it will basically be doing the same loop. And it is legal to rename row and column to reuse them. And after each row and column have been printed, we want to do a new line at the end of the row. And that compiles. It does. And I can check it now. And it works. O wins. We can try it again. And it seems that they both win that time, but I have not programmed to see who wins or who ties, so there we have it.